Jacob Morrison was digging a grave for his last chicken when the shadow fell across him like a thundercloud blocking the sun. "You going to have sex with me?" a voice said from above, deep, feminine, and utterly matter-of-fact. Jacob's shovel froze mid-thrust. He looked up slowly, his sun-damaged eyes squinting against the brutal New Mexico glare. What he saw made him question whether the desert heat had finally cooked his brain. She stood at least 7 feet tall, maybe more. Her shoulders were broader than his, her arms thick with the kind of muscle that came from a lifetime of hard labor. She wore traditional Apache dress decorated with elk teeth and turquoise beads, her long black hair braided with leather strips. Her face was striking, high cheekbones marked with ceremonial tattoos, dark eyes that held no shyness or uncertainty, and a jawline that could have been carved from the surrounding red rock. "Ma'am," Jacob said carefully, his Texas drawl stretching the word out like taffy, "I believe you might have the wrong ranch." "No. You are Jacob Morrison. 43 winters. Wife dead 3 years. No children. You live alone. You are the one." She stated these facts like she was reading from a book. "I am Nalin. I am 26. I need husband. You need wife. We have sex. We marry. This is practical solution." Jacob blinked. In 20 years of ranching, through drought, disease, Apache raids, and the slow death of everything he'd loved, nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Miss Nalin, was it? I appreciate the directness, but a man can't just, there are courting rituals, and proper introductions, and," he stopped, realizing how absurd he sounded explaining social niceties to a 7-foot Apache woman who just propositioned him while he was burying poultry. "Courting rituals waste time. I have no time." Nalin crossed her massive arms. "You know why I come to white man's ranch? Why I speak white man's tongue? Because Apache men will not have me. I am too big. Too strong. Too ugly, they say. I am 26, old maid by Apache standards. My family thinks I bring shame. They say, go to white man. They have different ideas about women." Something in her voice, a hairline crack in that confident facade, made Jacob set down his shovel. "You're not ugly," he said quietly. Nalin's eyes widened slightly, as if she hadn't expected kindness. "You are first person to say this in many seasons." "Well, it's true." Jacob wiped his hands on his worn pants. "You're striking. Different from what folks around here are used to, sure, but that doesn't make you ugly. Makes you remarkable." For a moment, Nalin's granite composure crumbled. Her eyes glistened, and she looked away quickly, blinking hard. "Apache men want small, delicate wives. Women who make them feel powerful. I make them feel like children. White men see me and see monster. See savage. See thing to be feared or destroyed." Jacob thought about his late wife, Sarah, tiny, fragile Sarah who'd barely reached his shoulder, whose hands had been like small birds in his own. He'd loved her desperately, but love hadn't saved her from the cholera that had swept through 3 years ago. Love hadn't kept their unborn children alive through 3 miscarriages that had broken her body and spirit. In the end, love had simply meant he'd had more to lose. "I see a woman who's been dealt a rough hand," Jacob said finally. "Same as me. Same as most folks out here trying to survive." Nalin studied him with those penetrating dark eyes. "You are different from other white men. I watch you for 3 weeks. You talk to your animals like they are friends. You leave water at the ruins for my people passing through. You bury your chickens with respect instead of throwing them to coyotes." She paused. "You are lonely. Like me. But you are kind lonely, not mean lonely. This is rare thing." Jacob felt exposed, like she'd peeled back his skin and examined his bones. "You've been watching me for 3 weeks. Apache people are good at watching. Good at being invisible. Your fence has 17 breaks. Your roof leaks in 4 places. Your well is going dry. You need help. I am very strong. Very good worker. I can fix these things. She took a step closer, and Jacob had to tilt his head back to maintain eye contact. I do not ask for romance. I do not ask for love words or gentle touches. I ask for partnership. For practical arrangement. You give me home, respectability, safety from soldiers who hunt my people. I give you labor, knowledge of land, strong back. And, she hesitated for the first time, and maybe children, if spirits allow. Strong children who can survive in this hard world. It was insane. Completely insane. Jacob should send her away, should maintain the careful isolation he'd built around himself like a fortress. The other ranchers already viewed him with suspicion for his refusal to join their vigilante groups hunting Apaches. If he took an Apache wife, especially one like Nalin, he'd be branded a traitor, possibly worse. But as he looked at this extraordinary woman, he saw his own desperation mirrored back at him. They were both outcasts, both alone in a world that had no place for them, both trying to survive in a territory that seemed determined to grind everyone down to dust. I can't promise you anything, Jacob said slowly. I can't promise that we'll ever be more than partners. My heart's been buried for 3 years, and I'm not sure there's anything left to give. I do not ask for your heart. Not yet. Nalin's expression softened slightly. I ask only for chance. For try. Apache have saying, wisdom comes to those who walk new paths. Maybe we walk this path together, see where it leads. Jacob looked around his failing ranch, at the broken fences, the dying land, the grave of his last chicken. He thought about the crushing loneliness of the past 3 years, the way silence had become so normal he'd forgotten what human conversation sounded like. He thought about Sarah, and what she might say if she could see him now. Knowing her generous heart, she'd probably tell him to stop being a stubborn fool. You can stay in the barn, he heard himself say. I'll fix it up proper, it's not fit for anyone right now. We'll try this as partners first. See if we can even stand living in the same space. If it works, if we both want to make it legal, then we'll talk about marriage and everything that comes with it. Fair. Nalin's face transformed with a smile that was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. This is fair. This is good way. Not forced. Not desperate. Just 2 people trying for something better. She extended her hand, and Jacob took it. Her grip could have crushed his bones, but she held him gently, like she understood the fragility beneath his weathered exterior. Partners, she said. Partners, Jacob agreed. As they shook hands in the shadow of the dying chicken's grave, neither of them noticed the rider watching from the distant mesa, a Mexican bandit named Rodrigo who'd been tracking Nalin for 3 days, seeing in her an opportunity for revenge against her Apache tribe and perhaps a valuable hostage. But that storm would come later. For now, in this single moment of unlikely connection, 2 broken people had found the courage to reach for something neither had thought possible, a second chance. The first week nearly destroyed everything before it began. Jacob had underestimated how much 2 people could get on each other's nerves when they'd both lived alone for years. Nalin rose before dawn and sang Apache morning prayers at a volume that shattered his sleep. He made coffee so weak she called it sad water. She reorganized his tools according to some Apache logic he couldn't fathom. He left muddy boots everywhere. She bathed in the creek at noon when the sun was hottest. He thought she was insane for choosing the warmest part of the day. White people bathe in cold water, then wonder why they are always sick, she'd say. Apache people waste the best working hours sitting in creeks, he'd counter. But slowly, grudgingly, they found rhythm. Nalin proved herself worth 3 hired hands. She repaired all 17 fence breaks in 2 days, using techniques that made his repairs look like child's play. She taught him which desert plants held water, which could be eaten, which could heal wounds. She strengthened the barn roof and dug a new well in a spot where she swore the water ran deeper, and she was right. Jacob, in turn, taught her to read English from his late wife's collection of books. Each evening on the porch, he'd sit beside her, though beside was relative when she was so much larger, and guide her through sentences. She learned with fierce intensity, her thick finger tracing words as she sounded them out. "Why you keep books of dead wife?" she asked one evening. "Does this not make grief stay fresh?" Jacob had never considered this. "I guess, they're all I have left of her." "You have memories. Memories live in here." Nalin tapped her chest. "Books are just paper. Memory is spirit. You hold on to paper too tight, spirit cannot breathe." It was the kind of observation that made Jacob realize Nalin possessed a wisdom that had nothing to do with formal education. She saw clearly, without the clutter of sentimentality that white culture prized. They'd been together 6 weeks when Rodrigo finally made his move. Jacob was in town buying supplies when it happened. He returned to find the ranch eerily silent, no sounds of Nalin working, no smoke from the fire, no singing. His blood went cold. He found signs of struggle near the well. Boot prints, 3 different sets, none of them Nalin's. Drag marks. And worst of all, spots of blood on the dry earth. Following the trail was easy, they hadn't bothered hiding it. They wanted him to follow. It was a trap, obviously, but Jacob didn't care. In 6 weeks, Nalin had become more than a partner. She'd become his friend, his confidant, the person who'd made him remember what it felt like to laugh. He found them in a box canyon 5 miles west, Rodrigo and his 2 men, and Nalin bound with ropes that must have taken all 3 of them to secure. Even tied up, she looked dangerous. Her face was bloodied but defiant. "Ah, the rancher arrives." Rodrigo called out in Spanish-accented English. "We have been waiting. You know who I am." "Should I?" "Rodrigo Mendez. This Apache whore's people killed my brother in a raid last year. I've been hunting her tribe ever since. Imagine my surprise finding one living with a white man." He grinned, showing gold teeth. "I think maybe you pay ransom for your Indian wife, yes. Or maybe I just kill her slow, make you watch. Haven't decided yet." Jacob's hand rested on his revolver. 3 against 1. Nalin tied up. Terrible odds. But he'd been a soldier once, before ranching, and soldiers learned that sometimes you had to bluff with an empty hand. "You're going to let her go," Jacob said calmly. "Right now." Rodrigo laughed. "Or what, old man? You shoot one of us, the other 2 kill you both. Maybe. But you'll be the first to die, Rodrigo. I guarantee that. And here's what you don't know," Jacob raised his voice slightly, "the Apache scouts who've been following you for the last mile will make sure your men don't leave this canyon alive either." It was a complete bluff. There were no scouts. But Rodrigo's eyes flickered to the canyon rim, and that moment of distraction was all Nalin needed. She'd been working her bonds the entire time, using a technique that slowly stretched the ropes. With a roar that echoed off stone walls, she surged to her feet, snapping the weakened ropes like thread. The nearest bandit barely had time to turn before Nalin's fist, like a sledgehammer, caught him in the jaw. He dropped like a stone. Rodrigo spun, raising his pistol, but Jacob was faster. His shot took Rodrigo in the shoulder, spinning him around. The third bandit fired wildly, and Jacob felt something burn across his ribs, painful but not fatal. Then Nalin was there, a force of nature unleashed. She grabbed the third bandit's gun arm and twisted. The sound of breaking bone was audible even over his screaming. In seconds, it was over. 2 bandits unconscious, one cradling a broken arm, and Rodrigo bleeding on the ground, his gun kicked far out of reach. Nalin turned to Jacob, her face a mask of blood and fury that slowly softened into concern. "You are shot. Just grazed. But when he looked down, his shirt was soaked with blood. The world tilted sideways. He woke in his own bed, bandaged and weak. Nalin sat beside him, her huge frame perched on a small chair that looked comically inadequate. "You are awake. Good. You are lucky, bullet just kissed you, did not bite deep. The bandits? I tied them up. Sheriff from town came and took them. They face trial." She paused. "You came for me. You could have run, saved yourself. But you came." "Of course I came. You're my partner." "No." Nalin shook her head. "Partners are practical. What you did was not practical. Was foolish. Was," she struggled for the word, "was love thing. Caring thing." Jacob tried to sit up, winced. "Nalin, You asked me to be patient. To let us be partners first. I respect this. But I tell you now, I am done being patient. I am done pretending my heart is not involved." Her voice was fierce. "You risked your life for mine. You see me as human being, as woman, as person worth saving. This is more than I ever hoped for. So I ask again, but different way this time, Jacob Morrison, will you marry me? Not for practical reasons. Not for partnership. But because I love you, and I think maybe you love me too, even if you are too scared to say it." Jacob looked at this remarkable woman, bloodied, powerful, vulnerable, and absolutely terrifying in her honesty. And he realized that somewhere in the past weeks, his buried heart had started beating again. "Yes," he said simply. "God help us both, yes." Nalin's smile could have lit the entire territory. She leaned down and kissed him, gentle despite her size, sweet despite the violence that had marked the day. They married the following week, in a ceremony that scandalized the territory and brought quiet joy to Nalin's people. The ranch prospered under their partnership, becoming known as a place where anyone, Apache, Mexican, white, or otherwise, could find fair treatment and honest work. Their daughter was born the next spring, inheriting Nalin's strength and Jacob's kindness. They named her Sarah Storm Morrison, honoring the past while embracing the tempestuous future. And when people asked Jacob how he'd ended up married to a giant Apache woman, he'd smile and say, "She asked, and I finally had the courage to say yes." Some love stories begin with lightning. Others begin with a simple question and the bravery to answer honestly.